Welcome to the Purpose Focused Advisor. This show is for financial advisors who want to grow their business with clarity, lead with purpose, and build a life that reflects what matters most.
Welcome back. It's time once again for the Purpose Focused Advisor. Rob Brown here, along with a familiar to many advisors guest, Bill Cates. Bill, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thank you, Rob. It's great to be with you. And in case anyone was looking at the show notes or the promo for the show, no, not Bill Gates. I missed it by one letter and a couple of bucks.
Well, I'm sure in many ways the advisors that I know who know you appreciate you way more than the other Bill. Bill, the last time you were on the show, we talked about your last book, The Language of Referrals. And
right.
I consider you to be the OG of referral experts inside of our industry. And you've written many books on referrals and introductions and really helping advisors build stronger businesses and take care of their clients. But now you've gone off the rails. You've written a book about a bank heist called The Hidden Heist. Bill, why that book and why now?
Yeah. Well, what's happened over the 30-odd years of helping financial advisors grow their business, I've come to really appreciate the value that they bring to clients, the importance of planning and making educated financial decisions that are in the client's best interest. And for the longest time, that mission of mine, helping people make educated decisions, has flowed through my service to advisors and helping them meet more people. And so this book is a little more direct. It's not usurping the value of the advisors. In fact, in The Hidden Heist, the financial advisor is the main protagonist. We advocate for people finding the right advisor for themselves. But I just want to go straight to folks around my concept around money beliefs and money story, which I know we can talk about, and just help people have a healthier money story, a healthier view of money, so that they can indeed make better decisions and for themselves and for people around them. And so, what is the hidden heist? Well, the hidden heist is the limiting beliefs, the mistaken assumptions, the unhelpful emotions that most people, all people, I would say, have around money. Even advisors have head trash stuff around money. And so that's the hidden heist, because it robs us of our current and future self. I know you're going to ask me questions about the book, but that's the essence of why the book and why now, just because I'm passionate about it. This is my mission. This is the next step in leaving a legacy to help people with these decisions.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it would be we wouldn't be fooling anybody who was watching this podcast that Bill and I are not in our 20s. And I feel like what you're describing, Bill, is there's another season, a new season to your life right now, where sharing these money stories, sharing this book is another season where you can use the years of experience that you have in talking with advisors and talking to people about money to kind of bring those two things together. And I'm sure it must be exciting.
Yeah, it is. And in fact, talking about seasons, one of the audiences for this book, big audience really, are millennials and older Gen Zs. It's younger folks. I like to say the work I'm doing in that area is lessons in money that your parents didn't tell you, teach you, couldn't teach you because they didn't know themselves, or you weren't listening. So one of the things with the Hidden Heist, we're advocating advisors, those who are inclined to purchase copies for not just for their own enjoyment, because who doesn't like a good heist, but for their clients and maybe their older clients to give to their children, their younger adult children. I'm also doing a TED Talk, and I learned that on the topic, and I learned that the big bubble of listeners for TED videos, TED Talks, are also millennials and Gen Z. So I feel like with the book and with the TED, I'm hitting that younger generation in a way that perhaps the parents can't reach them because of that parental child dynamic. So yeah, that's older generation giving to the younger generation, but without being preachy, teachy, more like Uncle Bill rather than Parent Bill.
Yeah, I love that. And so now we have three Bills on the podcast: Bill Gates, Bill Gates, and Uncle Bill.
Uncle Bill, yeah, there you go. That's funny.
So, I think what you said is just so important because you talk about this in the book, and we'll get into the style of the book in a minute, but you talk about this in the book, that these beliefs that people have about money can limit the way that we live and think, interact with other people. And some of that comes from the fact that we didn't talk about money in our house when we were growing up, or the conversation in the house around money was mom and dad arguing about money.
Yeah.
Or maybe there were situations where money was spent too freely, and money was didn't get the respect that it deserves.
Sure.
I think you did a great job of pulling that out in the book.
Yeah, thanks. And all of those are based on real interviews I've done with real people. In fact, we even interviewed a hostage negotiator to help us handle the bank scene properly. I interviewed 2 bank robbery victims. And if you get the book, you get access to the vault. And in the vault, you can actually listen to those interviews with the hostage negotiator and bank robbery victims. But in terms of the beliefs and the stories, I've done almost, I'm probably at about 100 money story interviews right now. And so what we did is we took some of the big ones, the most prevalent ones, and then my co-author, Jeff C. West, did a magnificent job bringing those to life through the characters. So each one of the characters that was in the bank when the robbery started, they bring their perspective, their belief, their assumption, whatever, to the conversation. So it comes through the characters, and it's real stuff that I gleaned from real people. None of it will be a surprise to financial professionals because we know that people have anxiety around money. They have scarcity mindset. They don't know anything about compounding or how money flows and all of that. But we brought to life with I think, in a way, I wanted the book to have an edge. So that's the bank robbery, right? It's got a little tension, a little suspense, a surprise ending, which I know we talked about not giving away. So we got the edge, but we also have a lot of humor. A lot of comic relief. The robbers are bumbly, and some of the characters in the vault are kind of funny. And so I feel like it's a really good combination of suspense that you don't usually get in a parable book, humor you don't always get, and lessons that people who read the book will glean and maybe make a difference in their life.
So I want to talk a little bit about why you chose the parable style.
Sure,
I've written 2 books in parable style, so I love writing that way. And to help do that, you brought in Jeff C. West, who's been involved in a number of parable style books, many of which our audience would recognize. And I apologize, I didn't write any of those titles down, but who cares? We're talking about The Hidden Heist. But why a parable? What drew you to that in telling this story?
Yeah, I felt like, there are so many books out there on basics of money and all that, and they're good. Nothing wrong with that. There are a lot of books around mindset, the money mindset. I've read a lot of them, and almost in research for this book. But there's not much in the way of a story around this. There are a couple others out there. I'll mention them. The Wealthy Barber is kind of a classic. It's all focused on compounding. And then the Latte Factor, also a pretty decent parable book. So I just know that that's a good vehicle. Parables have been around forever. The Bible is made up of parables. Some of the classics are, The 1 Minute Manager, Who Moved My Cheese, The Alchemist, The Greatest Salesman in the World, and then Bob Berg and John David Mann's Go Giver series. In fact, those two gentlemen, Bob Berg and John David Mann, are hosting our launch party. So it's I just knew that it was a great way to get some good stuff, and I knew it would be a challenge for me too. I'm kind of the straightforward guy. I'm the nonfiction writer. You mentioned the books I've written, and so I had the ideas, but I knew I needed someone to bring the characters to life and bring the story to life, and that's where I turned to Jeff C. West, and he did a great job, and it turned out to be a great partnership. And by the way, I was so afraid that people would get so drawn into the story, which everyone's telling me they do, that sometimes the points might get missed a little bit because you're just reading the story and want to know what happens next. And so I decided that in the appendices, I'm going to have some of the straightforward stuff. So whatever is communicated in the book through story, I then put kind of straightforward at the end. In fact, Bob Berg, in his endorsement, called it, let me get this right, a Netflix thriller meets the only money guide you'll ever need. Now, is it the only money guide you ever? No, of course not. And it doesn't replace Great Financial Advisors and other books that maybe some of your advisor clients have written. But it is a blend of the two.
Yeah. Well, I found it fascinating. And as I said before we started the episode here, I felt like the lessons got blended in a way that it was very difficult to miss them, but they didn't ruin the story. So what you learned through the lessons that the main character, the financial advisor, Alden Beckett, teaches, stick out, but they work in such a way that you can't help but think about them. I think that's true for me, having grown up in the financial services business and given financial advice, is they were great reminders. But they also helped create some depth and meaning, a reason for the story, because I think that's one of the best things about a parable style book in this format, is it gives you a reason for writing the story besides just entertainment. But Bill, I want to stop and I want to talk about Alden Beckett. He was far and away my favorite character, and maybe that's because he is a financial advisor, and I spend so much time with financial advisors. But tell me how the Alden story came around.
Yeah, so every parable, everyone I've ever read has like a guide. Kind of the guru, the guide, the teacher. Typically, a lot of parable books, it's kind of one character encounters a challenge. This is kind of the hero's journey formula. One character encounters a challenge and then meets a guide, and the guide works with that main character to overcome the challenge and solution, and happily ever after. In ours, we wanted to represent so many different beliefs and perspectives. We knew we need to have multiple characters, but we still needed to have that guide. And because we believe in financial advice and financial planning and working with the right advisor, it just made sense that we made Alden a financial advisor. Now, there's a little more to Alden's character. I'm not going to reveal it. That makes it a little more interesting to the story. So he's not just a financial advisor. But to me, that just sends the message, work with a professional. And so that is one of the messages that I want to support, because like you, I've been working with financial advisors. For me, it's been well over 30 years, and I want to support the industry and support the value of proper financial advice. So that's kind of how that happened. And one of the neat things in the book is, and I can't even remember whose idea this was, but we knew, every heist, every bank robbery, and there's hostages, you got to bring pizza in, right? Pizza for the hostages. So they bring the pizza in. And so Alden is starting to talk about money beliefs and money truths and his laws of financial independence. And so then the bank manager who is there, who happens to be one of Alden's clients, takes a Sharpie and takes the back of one of the pizza boxes and starts to write down some of these truths. And then there were 2 pizza boxes. So in the book, we actually show the pizza boxes and these things coming to life. So we just had a lot of fun figuring out what is a fun way to get this to people and how to hit them in the story, how to hit them with a graphic, kind of emphasize that. So Alden's an interesting character, and I just encourage people to dive in and learn some of the nuances to Mr. Alden Beckett. All the quotes, by the way, in the book, how a lot of books have quotes. They quote other famous people. Actually, here's something a little funny. When my co-author was working on this, he started with some quotes, and he was quoting other people. And he didn't realize this. I said to him, Jeff, do you realize that all your quotes are old, dead white men, right? And he goes, oh, I never thought of it that way, right? And so we were starting to bring in other people. And then we said, no, let's let it come from the financial advisor. Let's let all the wisdom in the book come from the financial advisor. So all the quotes are Alden's. Anyway, that's a little bit on that.
Well, I think from a financial literacy and education perspective, if you took Alden's quotes from the beginning of each chapter, you copied down the 7 money truths and the laws for financial independence, you've got a core course for helping that audience that you're going after to help them. They're in a fun way. I love the pizza box. I think it was Abbondanza pizza.
Abbondanza, abundance. It's Italian, and abundance is Abbondanza. That was my idea. I'll take credit for that one. By the way, it just occurred to me, Rob. I mentioned the idea, and look, I know this sounds a little promotional, and I suppose it is, but advisors getting it for their clients. But it made me think, what about the money stories, the money beliefs that an advisor and his or her team have? Right? How many advisors have examined their own money story and then also had the conversations with their team members around their money stories and the money stories that clients bring with them, and just elevating the awareness of that to the team relationship and then ultimately to the client relationship. I just think I came up with another selling point for the book anyway. So thank you.
Well, you can be as promotional as you like, because I am a huge fan of the book, because I am a huge fan of giving advisors tools that allow them to do more with their clients, to do more with their teams, to really build out who they are and what they're trying to do. And I think that point you just made, I just clicked away actually from our interview to look at the subject line of an email that I got today, not about financial advice, but the subject line was, your tone sets their tone.
Yes.
And I think that's really important, because I've been in a lot of advisor offices working with advisors where there's frustration because you have a conversation with a client who maybe has a really bad concept of money. Whether they waste it or blow it or hold on to it too tightly. And that frustration can be carried out into your team that dictates their tone and the tone of how they are interacting with your clients. So if for no other reason, it helps reset the tone of the advisor and the team and the way that you interact with clients, that could be a big reason to pick up a copy of the book all by itself.
Well, thank you. In fact, I remember an interview I did with a gal for my podcast, and I can't remember who it was, but we talked about that. We talked about some advisors, look, you're human, you got stuff around money. You got emotion around money. We all know that. And the market's up, the market's down, the market's sideways, the economy, the interest rate, it's like any anxiety that you might bring to the business in one way or another, will probably get communicated to your team. Maybe you do a pretty good job on not bringing that to your clients, but that's a little different, because your clients come into the office or you're on Zoom with them. You can kind of wall off that part of yourself. But when you're actually in the office and doing your thing and running around, you let your real self out a little bit more. We got to be careful about that.
Yeah, no, I think we do. The email that I was referencing about tone,
Mm-hmm.
the story that's told inside of the email is a situation where the person writing the email, a dad, was out running around with his daughter who was getting ready for college, and he was getting interrupted by his staff because they needed some input from him on some projects that they were working on.
Mm-hmm.
And his daughter said to him, "Dad, you sound angry. Are you okay?" And he goes, "No, I'm just in leadership mode." And his wife stops and says,
"Interesting.
When you're around us, you're usually not in leadership mode. You're in fun mode, joy mode, happy mode. But when you shifted gears to leadership mode, your tone changed. You sounded like you were angry." And there's something in that we can show up differently for different people if we don't stop to think about the way that we are thinking about things. That may be a little bit of a drift here, Bill, but I think that is part of that money conversation. We might think we have that healthy view of money as advisors, as people giving financial advice, but it may be shaded by all of the experiences we have, and so this is a good gut check.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't want to spoil the story at all, but there are 3 bank robbers in the bank. Without spoiling the story, do you have a favorite bank robber?
Well, yeah, because one of the bank robbers kind of has a. All right, so there's the 3. Yeah, one of them has kind of an epiphany, if you will, has a realization, one thing about stories we know that makes a good story. First of all, tension, that's important, challenge, but also growth, character growth. And so one of the bank robbers grows in character. And again, I don't want to spoil the ending. So yeah, it would be Bobby who grows through the story. And it's funny. It's got like, first he's part of the pack of 3, and then, then he starts to listen to this conversation going on in the vault. And what is this thing about money? And why are these guys robbing the bank? And he's realizing, well, yeah, why am I doing this? How did I get dragged into this? And,
Yeah.
So yeah, he's got to be the favorite. He's committing a crime. And, it was funny when I was talking to my own financial advisor about the book, and he says, I'm not sure that advisors are going to want to buy a book that has to do with stealing money. Yeah, okay, I get that, but there's a lot more to it than that. And there's a lot of growth, and there's a lot of realization that it's not good to do this. And so I don't know. It's it's just having that growth happen with him and with some of the other characters is just rewarding. And I got to give all credit to Jeff C. West for making that happen. That definitely came from him because he knows how to write a good story.
Yeah, no, it's a great story. And I think that growth in Bobby that you saw through the book, there's similar growth in other characters, the hostages. I mean, there are six hostages, right, in the book, because a good bank heist needs to have hostages.
And by the way, one of the things we learned from the hostage negotiator, and if anyone who reads the book and then listens to the interviews we did with folks will understand that the hostage negotiator we learned from, they don't call them hostages. And in fact, in negotiation and talking to the criminal, if you will, the perpetrator, they don't use the word hostage, and they don't want the perpetrator to use the word hostage. And so, we use the word now as we're talking, but actually in the book, we shy away from that. And that's based on the truth of how they actually handle these kinds of situations. So there's this whole book is born of truth, of people's stories,
Right.
real stories, real interviews that just plays out in this fictional account.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the hostage negotiator, but I want to go back to another point just real quick, because I think again, I'm going to sell this book as much for you more than you can.
I think, thank
because
you for that.
what dawned on me too is because, and again, I'm thinking about what benefit this book has to the listeners to this podcast, not just so they can read a fun story, but that development that Bobby has, that mindset change that he has that happens through the book, happens to the we can't call them hostages, to the 6 people in the vault, not by their own choice.
Exactly.
But they all have these epiphanies and revelations too, and they're all coming from different places.
Yeah.
Places that clients or kids of clients or grandkids of clients could be coming from, that give them a perspective on why different people think different way about money. So it's both the 7 money truths, but
right.
also the character development that pulls those truths together. So I really love that about the book.
Thank you.
And then I love the hostage negotiator. I think she is a really cool lady, Gabby, although I think she prefers to be
Gabrielle.
Gabrielle.
That's correct.
And the fact that you went out and actually spoke with a hostage negotiator to get a sense for that character is really important. What did you learn about negotiations like that maybe even ties into deeper things that advisors do in terms of the way that they have questions and talk with people through difficult parts of life?
Yeah. Well, it's really one word, which is really probably, or that represents a concept that's probably the most important in any relationship. SWAT, negotiator, financial advisor, spouse, friend, you name it. And that's empathy. And that's meaning understanding and appreciation for the other person's perspective. And so in the Hidden Heist, that's one of the things that Gabby or Gabrielle had to create, was this sense of empathy. Not to be patronizing. In fact, Carl, the kind of the main, the brutish of the robbers, admonished her for sounding patronizing. So there's a fine line between really understanding and appreciating and patronizing, and kind of a false appreciation. And so that's it. And in my book Radical Relevance, where I talk about this, that's my straight on book to advisors about how to talk about their value to others. Empathy is the key thing. That really is radical relevance. That the way you talk, think of it this way as kind of a metaphor. The way you, as an advisor, talk about your value to others, think of yourself as holding up a mirror to them. And so that when they hear you talk about your value, they see themselves in your message. Are you using me and our, or an I, or are you using you and your? And do you understand your ideal clients so well that you know their fears, their concerns, their dreams, their wishes? And so everything you say resonates with them, is relevant to them. And that's what I mean by radical relevance. So yeah, the big lesson, I guess, that comes from Gabby, and I hadn't thought about that. You're the first person to ask me about that, but it was an obvious answer. And that's what we learned from the hostage negotiator, Mark Lothar is a gentleman's name. And he says you have to establish that rapport and a sense of empathy. But it has to be genuine. It can't be faked and patronizing, because that'll just aggravate the situation. And it's interesting, the hostage negotiator that we interviewed, Boy, talk about a transformation he went through. He was a tough guy. He worked in prisons. He was a cop, still is a cop, I think. But he knew how to get into a fight, and he knew how to rough people up, and he didn't know how to negotiate out of a fight and to avoid it. My dad was a boxer. I wanted my dad to teach me how to box. He says, I'm going to teach you how to not have to box. Now, I get that. There was still a part of me that wished I had learned how to box. But nonetheless, the whole point I'm trying to make here is that he had that growth, and that's what allowed him to become a hostage negotiator and so good at it, because he had been on the other side. He had been the brute. He had been what it's like to be angry and to solve everything through some form of anger and altercation. And because he went through that own metamorphosis for himself, he then became a great hostage negotiator. Because why? Empathy, appreciation, and understanding for the other person's situation.
That's great. And thank you for going into the depth of that.
Yeah.
Because I love thinking about and learning from people. Mm-hmm. And there are real people behind some of the characters in your book.
Oh yeah.
But even those that the real person might be a little more tangential, mm-hmm. there's some depth there. There's something that you can learn from each character and the questions that they ask. So this has been awesome, Bill.
Yeah, my pleasure.
We're getting ready to land the plane here.
Sure.
Is there anything else that you want to tell us about the Hidden Heist before you tell us how to get a copy of it?
Well, yeah. And to get a copy, just go to thehiddenheist.com. But we'll come back to that. So let me give you the overarching premise that guides the entire book. This premise could have taken form in many different ways, and it may eventually with follow-ups. I just happened to make it around money because that's been my world for so long. And that is this. Whenever you're in a situation that isn't working, there's a complaint. It could be business, it could be personal, it could be your team members, it could be a spouse, it could be a friend, whatever, any situation not working. Sometimes it's really helpful to take a time out and say, okay, what do I believe about myself, about the other person, about the situation, about the industry, about the economy, about whatever the context is, that's coloring my perception of what's possible. Because if you just go straight to strategies or tactics, well, that's okay. Sometimes we need to do that. But if there's an underlying belief that's limiting, that's mistaken, then you'll go to the wrong strategy and tactics, and it won't be as effective. And so that's the overarching premise of the whole book, and one of my life lessons that I've learned and try to impart to others and share that with other folks. So, that's the bigger message, if you will, that comes out subtly through the book. And we also have so if you go to thehiddenheist.com or just go to Amazon, one thing I want to let people know, and I kind of alluded to is you don't just get the book, you get access to the vault. And in the vault are these interviews. In the vault are some other guides and things we've created that you might find helpful for yourself or for your clients, for your staff, for your team members. So it's a book, and it's a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I think it's great, and I really thank you and Jeff for writing this book and bringing it to life, because it's a great story, and I think it's going to make a difference in the lives of a lot of people for years to come.
Yeah, thank you.
So Bill, thank you for being on the podcast again. To our audience, thank you for listening in as always. We will be back next week, of course, but most importantly, remember that we are rooting for your success.
Thanks for listening to The Purpose Focused Advisor. If today's episode gave you something to think about or a step you're ready to take, head over to truestfancoaching.com. There you'll find tools, resources, and ways we can work together to help you lead with purpose and build the business and life you were meant for. If you enjoyed the show, we'd be grateful if you take a moment to rate and review it. It helps more advisors find their way here.